Hi, welcome back. Well, I'm continuing on with the frame now. I've almost got it cleaned up. I've got the front section cleaned up so I can start mocking up this front suspension. I'd like to really explain the front suspension and why I chose this particular brand. A lot of the reasons why I chose it aren't even here yet. The company, it's Classic Performance Products. They do some great suspensions, modifications. A lot of it is for higher performance suspension, higher performance brakes, steering. They've got some great products. I chose them because of this kit. And like I say, the kit isn't all here yet. So once it's all here, I'll point out all the reasons why I chose this over other manufacturers. I mentioned in another video, this kit was set up for a Ford. It's actually a 35 to 40 Ford. The reason I chose that is I got a hold of them, the company, CPP, and said, I would like to go with a universal kit. What will fit this frame? I give them the dimensions, the year, and with all of those dimensions that I gave them, they said what would be best, what's the most economical way to go, was to buy the kit for the 40 Ford. So I did, and it is a really good fit to this frame. I do have to make a little bit of trimming off of this piece, but that's about it. Everything lines up really well. So to start with, I wanted to get the frame stance where I wanted it. After playing with the body and all the height, this is my drive height right here. This is going to be the center of the front wheel, about where I want the suspension travel. This is the right height off the ground to have everything all work out. So I set the frame rail to that. And once I had the frame to that height, I started playing with leveling. Definitely want to level side to side. I thought this was going to be fairly level with the stance that I was after. It's actually not. This section of the frame is level. This starts to taper off and then tapers off even more, and then it kicks back up again. This area, as it relates to the body, would be exactly parallel to the ground. So I want about a 3% rake on the body. So I use the dimensions from the body to the front mount and to the rear mount, and I set that 3% based off of all my calculations. So with that now, I know this frame is exactly where I want it. Parallel to the floor, and this floor is level. So now I need to start cutting. I need to notch out this flange on the bottom of the frame. And like I say, I need to just trim a little bit off of here. The 40 Ford angles in on the frame rails. These are parallel. It's the perfect width at the front, so I don't have to add any material there. I just have to trim off material at the back. And then the top caps that go on here, they are also angled to match the 40 Ford. I ordered all of these parts, the racket pinion steering, the steering column, motor mounts, everything in November. Here we are, middle of April. So I was really surprised that it took Classic Performance Products that long to get me all these parts, but it's COVID. I think there's a lot of people like me that are working on their projects because they're just staying home, and they got overwhelmed with orders for all of these parts. So they're trickling in. I've only got one box left that's coming. It's all the brake system, the calipers and everything, which I need for mounting my wheels and setting my offset and all of those kinds of things. So once those come in, then I'll go over all of the kit and why I bought it and how it compares to other kits on the market. I kept fighting this, trying to get it perpendicular to the floor, before I finally realized it's cut on an angle for the Ford. So I need to trim a little more than 1/8 of an inch off. I made the frame perfectly level. I made the cross member perfectly level. The instructions are really vague when it comes to how everything lines up this way. They say to level it, but I'm seeing a lot online saying don't worry too much about this because it's really the rake of the frame. If I want to lower the tail end, it's going to lean back. If I want to raise the tail end, so it's not that critical. So since I have this pretty good to where I'm confident this is the stance I want the car, I went ahead and leveled it. Then I went ahead and tacked in all 4 corners, top and bottom. So this is now fixed. I feel very confident. Now it's a matter of doing the top hats. Well, these top hats were set up for the Ford. So if I put this top hat tight against the frame, these bolt holes should be parallel, straight across from each other. So in order to tip this out, I've got a big gap on this side. This is pulling everything out too far. The center line of this should meet up to the center line of that. This piece, this angle here, should meet to that corner. So if I trim this off so that it meets here the way it was designed, then I can get these holes straight, and then I can line them up side to side. That leaves me a huge gap on this side, so I'll have to either put in a filler piece, or maybe I can cut off enough here that it will push this back and everything will line up. It's not likely. So I started playing around with the other side. I cut a 1/4 inch off here, and it got me really close. So I think if I cut off another 1/4 inch, that will put me right up against this piece, and then I'm going to end up having a wedge shape. Once I trim this more, I'll have overlap here, I'll have underlap on this side. It's probably going to be okay. With everything, with inner fender wells, all the engine bay, everything that's going to be in here, probably not going to notice that. If this was a high-end show car, I would definitely make all these mods. But for this car, I don't see it's going to be that necessary. It's not going to be a top show car. So I'll trim a little off here. Hopefully that'll give me enough on this side that everything sets up. So as I mentioned, The instructions are really vague. It's all set up for a Ford with the angles. So I can't find any dimensions that says how far apart these should be. Well, that's critical. This is the mounting points for the upper control arms. I know they're supposed to be straight across from each other. I don't know if they're supposed to be angled. Really had a lot of questions. I spent probably 2 hours on the computer researching, trying to get all the dynamics of the original Mustang II. And I finally found enough diagrams to show me where this all needs to be. And then I also found out that this cross member from CPP is set up very similar to the Helix cross member and the Helix parts. The Helix universal piece, their instructions show very specific on how to set up all of the dynamics and the angles and the dimensions of this. The dimensions here at the bottom for the lower control arms is the same as the Helix. The upper control arms, the outer control arms, the lengths of those vary. There's 2, I think maybe even 3 different sizes depending on the width of the vehicle. So the universal piece, like I say, matches this. The upper hats match these. I put on the upper and lower control arms in the spindle, and I put a level on the spindle, and that works out to where all the dimensions, I'm confident, give me the suspension travel and the angles and the caster camber. Everything should work. It was a lot of research, but I've got it now. So it's just a matter of cosmetically, how do I want this to look? What's going to be the easiest way to weld all this together? So more of the notes that I found doing my research from the lower control arm bolt hole to the top of this hat. That needs to be 9 1/4. It's about a 1/2 inch high. So the back one looks like it's dead on where it's supposed to be. The angle of this for the brake dive that is built into the top hat, that should be between 3 and 5 degrees. It's currently at 9 degrees. So I have about a 3-4 degree angle right now. Probably about a 4. Well, that's what this needs to be. So I need to double check my dimensions. If that back is 8 7/8 like I think it is, then this needs to be straight cut. And then that way it'll put this at the same angle that it should be at the bottom. If I look at this as being flat, this angle is 3 degrees. So this was made correctly for the frame of the Ford if that was level at the top. So like I say, this is angled 3 degrees, 3-4 degrees. It's supposed to be angled 3-4 degrees, so I need to cut this straight off. Since I don't have the specific instructions for this brand of make, and I have the Helix, but I don't know if it is exactly the same, I want to triple check. So double checked where the hat should be. Now I'm triple checking with all the components to see where these holes should be. So if I set up my angle so that this is exactly perpendicular with the ground, these holes are meant to be able to be adjusted in and out. So I made marks on the frame where these holes should be. There's about 1/8 of an inch difference. There's plenty of room in this hat for adjustment. I'm currently splitting these right down the middle. So if I have to move it out 1/8 of an inch, that's fine. If I end up lowering the nose of this a little bit, it will kick in a little. So these will have to probably be brought out a little. So even if I need to move it 1/2 an inch, I have 1/2 an inch worth of movement. It's not likely I would need to move it any more than 1/4. So I'm comfortable now that I can burn this in. And worst case scenario, I'd have to grind a little of this back, just kind of oval it for the bolt, but I don't see that. I know for a fact that I don't need to go inbound anymore, because that's just going to get the wheels like this. And the more I go in, the more chances are that the spring is going to drag on this part of the frame. So that's also something I gotta check once I mock up the springs and the shocks, if I have to cut away here. And then not only do I have to check, make sure there's clearance here in full travel, the tie rod ends need to be checked so that the angle here, when it's turned all the way in, that doesn't drag when the suspension is bottomed out. So there's a lot of things that have to be looked at. If it's mounted on the top, mounted on the bottom, I've got to check all of that. If it contacts the frame, then the frame will have to be notched so that there'll be movement. So I'm confident now. My marks on this hat are where I need to cut and trim more. As the saying goes, measure 3 times, cut once. Well, in this case, I'm going to be cutting 3 times, but at least I didn't overcut and have to add. All right, I have the top hat all trimmed the way I think it needs to be. I'll do the other one the same to verify and make all my final dimensions, but with everything attached here, everything looks like it's where it's supposed to be. You can see the bolt holes in the slots, the angle across here. Is about 3 degrees. That's what it's supposed to be. So I'm comfortable. Feeling great. Get the other side on. Verify all the dimensions. So hopefully I trimmed this one to match that one. See, I had to take quite a bit of material off from the 40 Ford. If I look at my sketch and all my notes, I need to be 28 inches between center to center. Oh, damn, I'm good. And 33 and a half That's strange. The hide says this should be 35 inches from center hole to center hole. I'm 33 3/4. That's just the shock towers though, so it's not critical. It's just the shock geometry. The real critical dimension is from the center hole here to center hole here, and that is perfect. My heights here now are exactly where they need to be. This angle, 3.5 degrees, exactly where it needs to be. So, I just need to tack weld these into place, and this is all set up. All the geometry should be right. So I will put everything on, mock it all up, and make sure. But before I get involved in all that, there's still a lot of missing pieces. 6 months to get all the pieces? It's a little extreme, but with COVID, a lot of people doing projects in their garage, and the parts that are missing, they're real common parts. So high demand parts. So I need to figure out the rear end, what I'm going to do there. I'm probably going to do a 4-link. That's what I'm looking at, maybe a triangular top. Really depends on the rear end and how I can weld all that together. But I'm really close now that once I tack all this in, while I'm waiting for the parts for the rear end, because I wasn't sure what I was going to do there yet, I'm still not positive, I need to get those ordered. Once I get that ordered and this is all tacked in, now we can move over that motor that I've been teasing about. I'm excited to show that off. And then I can start figuring out where the placement of the engine is going to sit, and where those motor mounts are going to be, and where the transmission mount's going to be. Got to figure all the angles and dimensions and everything on that too. So that'll do it for this video. Appreciate you watching. Please give me a like, leave me a comment. Love to hear from you. Subscribe if you haven't. Really do appreciate it. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.